The book has a lot of divisions and sections, and I couldn't begin to even share the outline with you. It would be all the message, just sharing that. But the book, the first several chapters of the book just introduces us to Daniel as a person, and then we would see up to the historical part of the book of Daniel. So the first portion of Daniel is just a historical reference. In other words, it shares the history of the captivity. The prophecy in it's messianic. There's historical material. Ezekiel would have been a former captivity prophet, but Daniel would be a latter captivity prophet with regards to the material shared. I hope I didn't say that backward. I don't want to think about it, and so we'll leave it as it is. If I'm wrong, you can come talk to me about it, and I'll correct myself later. He would have been a contemporary of Ezekiel. They'd have been alive at the same time. But let's see, now Ezekiel would have been... let me be careful about that. I'll get myself in trouble. Anyway, the first 3 verses in the book of Daniel are Hebrew, and then up to chapter 2, and I believe verse 3 is in the Chaldean tongue. Now, before we get into our text this evening, if you don't mind with me, we'll read verse 1, and then we'll go to Isaiah chapter 39, and we'll see where Daniel fits into prophecy himself. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem, and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God. And that's a small g. And he brought the vessels into the treasure of the house of his God. Isaiah chapter 39, just be right before this. And I believe it's in verse 5 that we'll begin. Well, we'll read in verse... we'll just read the whole chapter because it really gives us our context. At that time, Merodach-Baladan, the son of Baladan, king of Babylon, okay, you see the connection here? Sent letters and a present to Hezekiah, for he had heard that he had been sick and was recovered. And Hezekiah was glad of them, and showed them the house of his precious things, the silver and the gold, and the spices and the precious ointment, and all the house of his armor, and all that was found in his treasures. There was nothing in his house, nor in all his dominion, that Hezekiah showed them not. Then came Isaiah the prophet unto King Hezekiah, and said unto him, What said these men, and from whence came they unto thee? And Hezekiah said, They are come from a far country unto me, even from Babylon. Then said he, What have they seen in thine house? And Hezekiah answered, All that's in my house have they seen. There's nothing among my treasures that I have not showed them. Then said Isaiah to Hezekiah, Hear the word of the Lord of hosts. And so here he is speaking as a prophet. Thus saith the Lord, Behold, the days come, that all that is in thine house, and that which thy fathers have laid up in store until this day, shall be carried to Babylon. Nothing shall be left, saith the Lord. And of thy sons that shall issue from thee, which thou shalt beget, shall they take away, and they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. Then said Hezekiah to Isaiah, Good is the word of the Lord which thou hast spoken. He said, Moreover, for there shall be peace and truth in my days. Hezekiah, if you know the story of Hezekiah, who had a sickness, he was sick unto death, and what happened?
He was given an extra 15 years.
Given an extra 15 years of his life. God prayed to him, and what was the promise during those 15 years? His kingdom would prosper and he'd have peace. Well, when he was sick, the king of Babylon sent, after they heard that he had gotten well, sent messengers on a diplomatic mission to come to him and to say, Hey, Hezekiah, we're glad that you're alive and that you survived your sickness. It's an amazing thing. We're glad that you're still alive. And Hezekiah was very pleased at the gifts and the messengers. And so he took the messengers for a tour. Now the problem with this is that the things of God, the matters of God, were not profane. And he brought profane, that is coarse or common individuals, people that wouldn't have had any business, and showed them the treasury of the kingdom of Israel. Keep in mind that if you study Old Testament prophet, particularly Jeremiah and Isaiah, you find that the kings of Israel are referred to as pastors, or the rulers or shepherds of the people. But the king didn't own the treasures of the kingdom. The king managed or ruled the treasures of the kingdom. But the treasures of the kingdom of Israel were not Hezekiah's. those treasures belonged to Hezekiah's God, the God of Israel, and he showed a profane group of people those treasures. Well, God sent Isaiah to Hezekiah to rebuke him for this matter. And Isaiah began by saying, who were those people? There's a reminder that they were not of Israel and that the treasures of Israel did not belong to them. And Hezekiah said, hey, they were from Babylon. He said, well, what did you show me? He said, I showed them everything. Absolutely everything. And Isaiah said, well, God said to tell you that because you showed His treasures to profane individuals, that those things will be taken by Babylon. You want to show the enemy what you've got? The enemy's going to take them. They're going to be taken, and your sons are going to be made eunuchs and taken. And Daniel is the fulfilling of that prophecy. It's interesting, Hezekiah's response, oh well, God said I'll have peace in my lifetime. God said I'll have peace in my lifetime. It might have been better if Hezekiah had died, but God knows about that. It might have been better if Hezekiah had died, but God knows about that, and of course God allowed him to live. But God used Hezekiah to judge Israel. He may have been a godly king, but God used him to judge Israel. Now here's Daniel, verse 2. The Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, which with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasury house of his God. Now Jehoiakim became a tributary of Babylon. A tributary would be an individual that he was allowed to stay as king of Israel, but he was a subordinate to Nebuchadnezzar and would have collected taxes from Israel for Babylon. Now there are two things that were left in Israel. I think that it's interesting to note, and I want to share with you, I believe, the reasons for that. This man, Nebuchadnezzar, was a very wise individual, a very intelligent, smart king. He didn't conquer the world. As a matter of fact, in the, I believe it's chapter 3, or chapter 2, when the vision, when he has the vision, and Daniel reveals it to him, and it's an image, and the head of it is gold. And Daniel says to Nebuchadnezzar, you are the head. In other words, you're the greatest king, and the description of his kingdom is that it encompasses, there's not a people group on the earth that you don't rule and reign over. And so he's referring to a worldwide empire, which meant Nebuchadnezzar was very powerful. Nebuchadnezzar was a powerful king for several reasons, but one of the distinctives of his kingdom would have been that though he would have been as cruel as many world rulers, he wasn't known for cruelty in the way that the Syrians or the Persians would have been known for cruelty. And what he would do when he would conquer a country or a people group would be to plunder them partly, but to allow them to keep a remainder of their treasure. And you think about the intelligence of this. Comes into Israel and takes part of the vessels, the treasures, out of the house of the Lord. Now it's interesting, isn't it, that if he had the power to take part of the treasures, that we would assume that he could have taken all of them, wouldn't you? If he could take half of the vessels out of the house of God, then he certainly could have taken how many of them? All of them. But he left half there, and he took some of the princes of Judah, some of the prime princes of Judah, the young people. Now why would he take young people? Well, there's a twofold reason for that. The first reason would be that a young person is more easily influenced and taught loyalty, and would have less of a loyalty than a person who is an adult. And he, of course, took young men that would have been very intelligent. They would have been the best looking physically. And it would have been people that would have benefited his empire. Now think about this, if you will. If you have part of the treasures left in your nation, and your children are in that other country, you see the position that will put somebody that's paying tribute? See, you stand to lose more because you haven't had everything taken from you. And it's a very wise, if you will, tactic. Because it didn't just demonstrate that Nebuchadnezzar wanted other nations to be subservient to him. See, many kings had had a rule